Okay, hello everybody. So today I'm going to be reading Dr. Ted by Andrea Betty and Fickle Limitory. Dr. Ted. One morning, Ted woke up, got out of bed, and bumped his knee. That's not good, thought Ted. I need a doctor. He looked everywhere, but he could not find one. And since Ted could not find a doctor, he became a doctor. Dr. Ted didn't have an office, so he made one. Dr. Ted didn't have a big bandage, so he made one of those too. Now all I need is a patient, he thought. He sat and waited for one to arrive. He waited, and he waited, and he waited. Nice waiting room, thought Dr. Ted. Then he waited some more. I think it's time for a house call, he thought. Hello, he called throughout the house. His mother was in the kitchen. You have the measles, said Dr. Ted. We should operate. Those are my freckles, said his mother. Eat your breakfast. That's a good looking breakfast. At school, Dr. Ted sat in the third row of Miss Johnson's class. All around him, students coughed and sniffled and sneezed. Dr. Ted smiled. Patients, he thought. The patients were very germy. At lunch, Dr. Ted took their temperatures and measured their blood pressure. He gave them medical advice, and they were very thankful. Dr. Ted was such a good doctor, even Miss Johnson came to see him. You can't practice medicine in the lunchroom, she said. You have the mumps, said Dr. Ted. Crutches would help. Could help. Those are my cheeks, said Mrs. Johnson. Eat your lunch. Principal Bigham walked in. Dr. Ted could tell that he was very sick. He needed a doctor. We already have a school doctor who visits on Fridays, Principal Bigham said with a smile. You have gingivitis, said Dr. Ted. You need a full body cast. Principal Bigham frowned. You also have bad breath, said Dr. Ted. You need a shot. The principal's face turned bright red. And a fever, said Dr. Ted. Excuse me. You need a transplant. We already have a school doctor. Principal Bigham pointed to the door. We could do something about that foot odor, said Dr. Ted. Go home, said Principal Bigham. Dr. Ted was very sad. He packed up his big bandage and went home. That night he took 2 cookies and went straight to bed. Dr. Ted. The next day during recess, Ted sat on a bench inside. He watched Frances Selving do gymnastics on the monkey bars. She was very talented. Everyone thought so, especially Miss Johnson and Principal Bigham. Frances finished her routine with a triple twisting somersault. She landed on Miss Johnson. Ouch, cried Miss Johnson. My ankle. Principal Bigham ran this way and that. Help, he yelled. Call an ambulance. Call the fire department. Call the library. Just go, somebody. But Dr. Ted was already there. He wrapped Mrs. Johnson's ankle with his big bandage. He checked her vision and her tonsils. Take 2 cookies, he said. You'll feel better in the morning. Just then the ambulance arrived, and the fire department, and the librarians. It's a good thing you had Dr. Ted, they all said. There's always room for another school doctor, said Miss Johnson. My work here is done, said Dr. Ted. Keep the bandage. Principal Bigham's face turned bright red. "You really should do something about that fever," said Dr. Ted. That night, Dr. Ted closed his office, packed away his stethoscope, and went to sleep, knowing he had done a good job. The next morning, Dr. Ted woke up, got out of bed, and sniffed the air. It smelled like burnt toast. "That's not good," thought Ted. "I need a fire truck." On the back it says, "A bump on his knee, a class full of sniffles, a principal with foot odor." Okay, so the back says, "A bump on his knee, a class full of sniffles, a principal with foot odor, and not a doctor to be found. Ted knows it's a good time to be Dr. Ted. Well, what else is a bear to do?" And on the back it says, on the front it says Dr. Ted by Andrew Betsy in personal limiter. See you next time, guys.